Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to our flute festival today. So this is technically, I guess, the 2022 spring Neofa Flute Festival. And for those of you that are wondering what on earth Neofa is, it's the Northeast Ohio Flute Association. So that is our kind of in-house organization, regional flute organization at the University of Akron here. So we yearly typically put on a festival, but I was on maternity leave this fall. And so when we normally have it in the fall, we kind of moved it to spring just to see how this goes. So we may actually have another 2022 festival in the fall. I am Lindsay Leach Sparks, and I'm the teacher at the University of Akron, for those of you who are not familiar. And during the pandemic, I mean, I guess it's still during the pandemic, but in the early days of the pandemic, I took advantage of some of the time off that we all experienced to kind of complete some long-term goals that I had always had, so bucket list items. And one of those things was to get certified in yoga. So I actually have two certifications. I've got a 200-hour yoga teacher certification, and I've got an 85-hour prenatal yoga certification. So, so I've been kind of having fun doing that since, since, like I said, when everything was shut down, we had a little bit more time to kind of do those things. So what I thought maybe we would do today, we almost always, when we're doing our festivals, whether they're virtual or in person, we have some kind of warm up in the morning. And we've done various things over the years. I think last year I did kind of a more traditional warm up where we all played, Moise and, did some articulation exercises, and we kind of just stuck to traditional flute warm-ups. In the past, we've had some body mapping, and we've had other clinicians come in and do various exercises in the morning. So what I thought maybe we would do today is try to incorporate yoga into our daily practice. Got more people coming in here. There we go. So even if you don't already have a yoga practice like working for you, that's totally fine. We can just kind of pick and choose and take a couple of pieces from different yoga poses. We call those asanas, that help in basically enhancing what we can do on the flute. So the three things that I was considering for today are ways that we might be able to incorporate different poses for a couple of different purposes. One purpose could be just warming up in the morning. I mean, I know we've all been there where we have an early day and it's cold, and we're trying to get the motivation to get our practice room self ready and get our flute out and that kind of thing. So just warming up our body to be ready to do that is one way to incorporate yoga. Another thing that's very, very useful is kind of for focus. And we can talk a little bit about mindfulness, but what I'm going to focus on is actually kind of performance nerve management. For some of us, and all of us, that get nervous when we play, how we can maybe use some yoga poses to help with that. And then maybe sort of related to the first one, but injury prevention is another big. So when I'm getting ready to practice, there are a couple of things that I really like to do first, and that's why I'm sitting on my mat. So if you're sitting anywhere, pretty much you can do this. You don't have to be on a mat. You can be on a chair. You could be on your bed, although that's going to be harder. Okay. But yeah, you can do these kind of anywhere. So find yourself a comfortable seat, and for now, keep your flute safe, either in its case or on a stand somewhere. And this is just warming up our bodies to get to be prepared and ready to play. Okay, so the first thing that I do is think about my spine. Our spine literally connects our bowl way down low, right, with our head. And our head is sort of balanced on top of this this really long chain of vertebrae, right? And some vertebrae are more flexible than others, but we naturally have 4 curves in our spine, okay? And so when we say, you know, sit up straight and put your shoulders back and, you know, do all these things when we're actually playing, sometimes it's not natural. So what we want to do is try to find our individual most natural position for our spine. All right, so whatever you're doing, make sure you're sitting on your sit bones. And you may have heard of this, you know, in yoga classes or in Pilates or, you know, any other kind of body mapping space that you might have been, you know, accustomed to doing or familiar with. But your sit bones are literally the bottoms of your pelvis. Okay, so like I said earlier, we kind of have this thing we like to call the pelvic bowl. Okay, and the very bottom of them is your sit bones. And so you should be able to feel them, right? So kind of get yourself oriented to where you feel like, you know, you're on those bones. When you do that, your spine, your bottom of your spine should naturally kind of curve out just a little bit. So here I am on my sit bones, and the bottom of my spine kind of goes this direction, just a tiny bit. Now, this might feel different than how we normally sit, right? I was just sitting in one of our regular classroom chairs at Akron yesterday, and it's a very scoopy chair, and I automatically went like this, right? And if you're sitting in a chair all day like this, you're actually sitting on the bottom of your spine. So that's not usually very comfortable, but let a few more people in here. There we go. But if you can get on your sit bones, then from there, allow your vertebrae to just stack as naturally as possible. You might have to shake out your shoulders a little bit. You might have to get your neck a little bit kind of relaxed, right? What I like to do is feel like I am a puppet, like a marionette puppet, and I'm string coming from the top of my head. So if I'm pulling, or if I have somebody who is kind of holding my string up for me, my head naturally falls onto the stack that we just created in our spine. You don't have to necessarily feel like you're straight back and shoulders, you know, all, you know, up straight, sitting up straight. You just need to feel like your spine is stacked in a way that you're not being compressed and that you're not being kind of forced into a particular shape, okay? Your spine, at the very top of your spine, is actually right in between your ears. It's really interesting. I wish I had like a skeleton here I could show you, but imagine you could like take off the bottom jaw and find the space in your head right in the center between your ears. That's actually the top of your spine. That's where your skull actually sits on your spine. So what you want to do is kind of find that space so that your head floats up onto the top of your spine. Once you're here, take a nice deep breath in through your nose. Try to fill up your abdomen low first. We can definitely learn yoga breathing. So try to fill up your abdomen low first. And I like to think of 3 inches below my belly button, somewhere in there. And then fill up the middle and the top. And breathe out through your mouth, but pull your navel toward your spine so that then you're exhaling from the bottom and then the middle and then the top. So we call this pranayama in yoga. So go ahead and breathe in through your nose again, fill from the bottom, middle, top, and then exhale bottom, middle, top. Inhale through the nose, middle, top, exhale, bottom, middle. And even just this practice of rhythmic breathing can actually help get us warmed up and ready to go in terms of playing, you know, because how many times do we get our flute out and all of a sudden it's like, okay, we got to get our breath going. This also kind of helps to start moving these muscle groups in here. So our abdominis recti, our obliques, our intercostal muscles with our ribs, we use all of those in breathing. Okay. And that's one thing that I think sometimes we neglect when we're warming up. We reach straight for the flute and we say, okay, we got to do our release, or we got to, do our long tones or our tap knuckle bear. And it's actually pretty important to feel where that air is going. Another place that we don't often feel that we should feel is our back. So your diaphragm muscle that goes underneath your ribs actually attaches to your ribs. It attaches to kind of the side muscle here, and then it attaches to your spine and your back. So this fluency in our spine is going to be really important when it comes to breathing and releasing your lower back muscles. So let's try this all one more time. This is our opening pranayama. And again, you got to find your own really comfortable seat. I'm sitting on the floor, but you can do this anywhere you want. Okay. And stack your spine. Let your head float. Breathe in through your nose. Up through your mouth. Lower. Upper. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. When you breathe into your back. And out. Good. So now that we've sort of gotten that apparatus going, let's talk about different muscle groups that we might need to warm up whenever we're playing. I think no matter what instrument you play, almost always musicians like to carry a lot of tension in their necks. Don't know why, but we do. Right? So in terms of warming up our necks, what I like to do is just some really simple neck rolls. So go ahead and find your seat and simply look down at your feet, right? So you should feel a little bit of a stretch in the back of your neck, but not enough to give you a headache, okay? So just a little tiny bit, and you don't want to lean forward. Leaning forward actually stretches the wrong muscle group, right? So just look down and then look over your right shoulder. So now you're stretching the side of the neck and back down. And now over to your left shoulder. So it's this side of your neck and back down. And let's do that one more time. Right, down, left, down. Now come back up so that you have your puppet string again. And you're going to tip your ear to the right and up and to the left and up. One more time on each side and left. Now what's really great, and we do this in yoga an awful lot, is we try to link the breath with the movement. So typically when we are contracting a muscle, we try to breathe out. And then when we open up, we breathe back in, and then contracting, we kind of compress again, okay? And exhale. So now we're going to start moving bigger muscle groups where that's going to be relevant. There are multiple ways that we can warm up our spine, basically. I like to think about warming our spine because it's really what holds us up for everything, right? So there are 6 different ways to do it, okay? And we did a little bit just on the top, but we're going to go left and right, front and back. And then we've got some 3-dimensional kind of movements we're going to do here in a minute. So if you're on a chair, you might want to see if you can find a spot on the floor so that we can kind of warm this up a little bit. And again, if you're in a practice room, like this is early morning, it might not be the best, environment to be on, the floor, but there are ways that we can modify this. So we'll kind of talk through that as we go. Okay, so let's give a try here with the spine. And so like I said, we're going to breathe in and out with our movements. So the left hand is going to walk a little bit out wherever you are. If you're sitting on a chair, this is fine, but you just want to kind of put your left hand out for balance. Lift your right arm up, breathe in because we're elongating this muscle, and then breathe out as we compress down to the left side. And then up, breathe in. And one more time. and then breathe in and all the way back down and breathe out. Other side. So you walk the right hand out, left arm up, breathe in, breathe out, and up, and then out, and up, and out one more time. And all the way back down. Good. All right, now what I'd like to do is twist. This is our 3-dimensional move here. So you can do this sitting. This is one of our kind of modifications, and I'll show you a couple ways to do this. So first things first, and I should also mention, as far as prenatal yoga goes, twisting is not the best thing for prenatal yoga. So, so you probably don't want to twist super deeply if you're in that boat. So this, you want to keep towards your thoracic and your cervical vertebrae rather than the lumbar vertebrae. Okay, so left hand to the right knee, right hand up, breathe in, and then you want to pull your right hand back down behind you and look over the right shoulder. And that's where you twist and exhale. So breathe in, sit up tall, twist and exhale. And breathe in and twist. All right, and then undo. Good. All right, so we're gonna do the opposite side now. Right hand to left knee, left hand up, breathe in, and then out, back, and twist. Breathe in, and twist. And in, and twist. Good. And then back. Excellent. Okay, so now these next couple of moves, what I want to do is just kind of relax and open our shoulders a little bit. And this is where it's nice to have, you know, a mat or a place on the floor. If you're in a practice room, we can amend this a little bit. But let me just show you the moves first, and then we'll talk about amendments here. So the best thing to do is get on all fours if you can, okay? And this is one thing that's called, well, first of all, there's cat-cow, and that's a really great thing to warm up the rest of our spine. So let's do cow first, which is where you want curve in your spine, okay? Bottom spine is up and your shoulders are up and you're looking up. That's an inhale move. And then you exhale to cat, where you have your back arched. And then inhale, exhale, cat. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. Good. Now take your left arm, and I'm going to twist away from the computer for a minute so that I can show you this. But you want to twist up and look up over your left shoulder, and then thread the needle underneath your right shoulder, and walk your right arm out. And breathe here for just a minute. So this is basically opening up your traps, your trapezius and your deltoid muscles in your back, and then also your shoulders. And then exhale one more time. Walk your hands back, push up, and then come back to all fours. And I'm going to actually turn around so I'm facing you when I do this other side, but you don't have to move. We're going to do the other side, okay? So all fours, right hand comes up and twist. And then under your left arm, thread the needle. And then your left hand comes out, so you get a really good stretch in that right shoulder and the right side. And then on the next exhale, once you feel like you've gotten this stretch kind of worked out, you can go ahead and come right back up to your all fours. Now, if you're in a practice room and you don't want to get down on the floor, because we've all been there, there are a couple of good ways to do this. Now, the cat-cow thing can be done actually on, let's see if I can do this with a piano bench, on a surface, okay, like a piano bench. So you can be here and you can do the same stretch. right? That will work. Now, as far as the shoulder opening exercise, the next best thing is to actually pull one arm and hug it toward you. So I used to do these types of warm-ups in like high school sports all the time. You guys might have seen these in other places too. But if you take your right arm and wrap it around the front, right? You don't have to hug yourself, but just wrap it around your front, and then take your left arm and pull the right arm toward you. That actually, it does the same stretch straight across here that we just did with the eye of the needle, okay? And then you can do the same thing on the left side where you have your left hand front and you kind of pull your arm toward you that way. So there you have it. And while we're standing, there's a chat here. I'm just gonna check really quickly. Okay, cool. We're good. So while we're standing, let's see if we can take all of this stuff that we just opened in our upper half and take it to our standing position. Now, in yoga, we call this mountain pose, okay? And again, if you're familiar with yoga, I'm sure you're familiar with that pose. It's sort of our centering pose. There are a lot of different ways to do it, honestly. And the way that I was taught when I did my training is to put your toes together, you know, which means that your heels are probably apart somehow, and then try to center that way. For me, that's very uncomfortable. I don't know why, but I would like to maybe, since we're flutists here, maybe do this the flutist way, if we're okay with that. So my mountain pose is almost always how I stand when I'm playing, okay? And that's kind of shoulder width apart. My feet are sort of shoulder width apart, okay, or close to it. Now, when I'm playing flute, I often have my left foot forward, okay, because we are asymmetrical when we're playing, right? But for now, just for centering, let's see if we can just keep our feet even. Knees not locked. They don't have to be actually bent, but not locked. And then we want to feel the weight in all parts of our feet, mostly in the balls of our feet. You don't want to be standing too far back in your heels, but you don't want anybody to be able to knock you over in your mountain pose. Okay, so if someone were to come by and, you know, bop you, you would still be stable. Your knees are kind of, you know, in a good position to not be locked, to be bent, and that your weight is distributed in a way that it can kind of balance between the halves, okay? So now with our mountain pose, oftentimes we are either looking off into the distance, so you might want to pick a spot on the wall, or look at, you know, maybe you can close your eyes if you feel comfortable with that, but you want to have your hands down by your side for now, okay? Let me turn to the side for a second so you can see this too. Most of the time, most of us will stack up sort of one thing on top of another, okay? So we talked about the 4 curves of our spine, and we you know, warmed up our whole upper apparatus here. So you want to feel the energy through the balls of your feet when you're doing mountain pose, through your hands, and everything above that lines up. So your knees, your hips, your shoulders, your ears, okay? And this is another kind of, you know, something to check on in yourself. If you have a mirror, this is very easy to do, or if you see yourself in your, you know, in your little bubble there on Zoom, check where your head is. Many of us as flutists have like a permanent tilt to our head this way toward our right side, because we get used to playing in band, you know, kind of squished up against the next person, or we're practicing and we get tired and our head kind of drops that way. So there's something to think about. You want to take all that stuff that we just did on the floor and move it to your mountain pose. So your pelvic bowl is stable, right? Kind of like we had it with our sit bones. You want to think about your spine stacking one vertebrae on top of another. All the curves are where they need to be. You're not carrying any tension in your hips. That's another thing to think about when we're standing. Our shoulders are relaxed. They're kind of not down and back necessarily, but they fall that direction. And that our head is balancing up on top of all of that. So if you find that your head has a little tilt, think about straightening it, you know, as much as it's comfortable, because it's just a learned position that our body has gotten into as flutists. And take a couple of good breaths here with your mountain pose. So let's do the same pranayama that we did before. Okay, you're gonna breathe in, down through your nose, down to your abdomen, into your center, and then through your chest, and then out through your mouth the same way. Pull the navel toward the spine, and then up and out. Okay, so go ahead and breathe in. And navel to spine out. Breathe in. Out. In. Out. Good. If you have your flute available, let's go ahead and try a couple of things with the flute. Before we even get it though, let's also talk about injury prevention while we're here, because this is all good for warming up and injury prevention. What we've done so far, we haven't really talked about our hands and the fine muscles yet. So most of us already know that we don't have a ton of muscle material in our hands. We have a lot of blood vessels basically in our hands. And so the muscle material is mostly down in our arms. And because of that, whenever we're playing, we have to be very cognizant about our wrists, okay? Because the tendons that operate all of the, the stuff in our hands that operate our fingers actually have to go through the carpal tunnel, right, which is in the center of the wrist, and to these muscles that then operate the fingers. A couple of things that we can do to kind of warm those up. I like to just, make sure that I'm improvising my movements, okay, with my hands, and then take them together. We call this prayer pose, okay, in yoga. Take your prayer pose a little further and raise your elbows. So when you start with prayer pose, you're kind of in the center of your chest. And this is a very common way to have mountain pose presented, right? Is with prayer pose. And if you raise your elbows, you get a little bit of a stretch through these tendons and through that carpal tunnel. Now, you don't want to overdo. I know some people that are super flexible and can go all the way down and everything. Just go as far as you can feel it a little bit. And now, while we're here, take your hands and your fingers and change your church steeple into a into a swan dive, okay? And do this thing against the backs of your hands. And that's something that we don't often think about stretching is our metacarpals, okay? So we've got carpals and metacarpals before we get to our phalanges, okay, and our fingers. And so we've stretched the tendons, okay, against the carpal tunnel, and then this direction to get those metacarpals. Okay, now shake that out and go ahead and grab your flute if you have it. And what I'd like to do is just basic long tones. I'm not sure I have my original sound turned on. Let me do that so I don't sound funny. There we go. And we're going to just basically take exactly this position that we just created and kind of organized for ourselves and put it to our flute. Okay, so let's do this. Let's modify what we need first for playing, and we're just going to do kind of the Moise long tones. We're going to start on a B natural and start doing chromatic half steps down. So like I said, I like to have my left foot forward just a little bit and my right foot back just a little bit. So find your position. Oftentimes we don't think about this whenever we're playing, but it is our foundation, and it's really important to have a connection to the ground while we're doing this, right? So get your feet in the spot that you think you have that balance that we talked about with mountain pose, where you can kind of, feel your weight going foot to foot. You've got your knees bent, or at least not locked, okay? And all of that spinal work that we just did, where our head is up on top of our spine, don't change any of that, okay? Take your flute and bring your flute up to you without messing with that long center that we just created, okay? And that's a really important thing. I think a lot of us, we get our flutes out and we're just like, okay, let's go, and we start kind of playing around with that balance, but finding it is super duper important to us. Okay, so nice long spine, head on top of the spine, bring the flute to us. Check in with your wrists. Okay, so here, your flute should be balanced basically between your thumb in your right hand, your forefinger, okay, in your left hand, and then the lip, all right, bottom lip, right? And the reason why I say check in with your hands, if I turn this way, you can kind of see it better, but my wrists are sort of straight, okay? More or less straight. That's so that I can facilitate that carpal tunnel tendon activity that we were just talking about, okay? So bring the flute to you. Let's just try some Weiss long tones and incorporate the pranayama that we just did too. So you're breathing in through your nose, all the way down 3 inches below your belly button, fill up in the middle and then in the chest, and then out through your mouth, but this time we're gonna just do it through an embouchure and play our long tone B, okay? And this will be Weiss style, so follow me. B to A sharp, and then we're gonna keep going down, okay? So breathe in. And repeat, breathe in. And then the A sharp to A, breathe in. Breathe in. Let's do one more, A to A flat. So breathe in. Breathe in. Good. So I don't know if that feels any different to you than maybe how you normally approach your long tones with, you know, your kind of daily practice. But for me, I feel a different kind of engagement in my core. And the fact that I'm really concentrating that pranayama on getting nice and low down and then pulling my belly button toward my spine is what actually engages the support, the air support for me. Now, support's a whole other topic that we could probably spend an hour talking about some other time, but just briefly, you know, the support that I'm referring to is basically your diaphragm muscle. When it contracts and you breathe in, you feel that really low kind of filling, right, in kind of your abdomen. You don't actually breathe into your abdomen. There's no way to get air in there, right? Your lungs don't go down that far, they only go up to here. But because you're contracting that muscle, you're feeling it down here. So what happens when you pull your belly button toward your spine is that you're actually putting some side pressure, your abdominis recti pull in, and you're putting some pressure against that diaphragm. So the diaphragm wants to stay down, and you're actually pushing against it. And it's that isometric exercise between the two when we're playing that actually creates that very fast airstream and that support structure that we need for our long tones. So you can experiment with this in your own practice with a tuner, right? With longer tapers to make sure that the taper stays in tune, and that, you know, the focus of your sound is the right thing, and, you know, you don't have a lot of air at the end. I mean, there are all kinds of variations on this, but the core and the structure of what we just talked about today is basically going to stay the same. Okay. All right. So moving on. First of all, does anybody have any questions before I start talking about some like performance anxiety management? Okay, cool. If you do have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we can kind of talk about them at the end a little bit here. So let's before I go back to my mat, talk a little about performance anxiety. So I don't know anybody that doesn't have some performance anxiety. We all have to deal with nerves on some level. Some of us more than others, and some of us get kind of more, I should say, worsening effects than others, right? So performance anxiety is basically a function of our parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic is kind of our lizard brain, okay? It's one of these things that we don't have conscious control over. A little bit it's like blinking, or breathing, or your heartbeat. You really don't have a say. You can hold your breath for a little bit, you can have a staring contest, but eventually you're going to blink. And your parasympathetic is something that we don't have, like I said, conscious control over. So that controls our fight or flight function. That's basically what performance anxiety is. It is an adrenaline reaction, and sometimes cortisol as well, right? It's an adrenaline reaction to a situation that our brain perceives as being dangerous, okay? We have to somehow learn to tell that part of our brain, that lizard brain, that this isn't a lion trying to eat us, and this isn't a fire we have to run from or something like that. It's just an audience or just a performance, and it's fine, right? Now, musically speaking, there are things that we can do that help this, right? Just being comfortable with the parts that we're playing, practicing everything 5 or 10 times in a row without mistakes, right? Making sure that those spots that come up in our practice room that are kind of those like, oh my goodness, here it comes spots, are so well, established in our fingers and in our sound that we don't have any any doubts about it, because it's really the doubts that play into the performance anxiety side, right? So here's the thing, is that no matter how much you do those things and how much preparation you have, you're still going to have nerves. We are all human, right? So you're still going to have that part of your brain that's like, oh, here it is. Okay, here's this performance that we start to get a fight or flight response from. The things that can happen are sweaty hands, right? Dry mouth, and then the breathing. Breathing is a big deal for us, right? It's obviously a big deal for any musician, but as wind players, and especially as wind players that can't seem to ever get enough air, we're always trying to find more air. Only having a breath that goes to here, and we have to constantly keep, kind of not hyperventilating, but resupplying our oxygen. That is, that's problematic for us. So the pranayama that I talked about earlier is actually one of the things that we're going to kind of start with now. So go ahead and find a seat again, anywhere you want. Doesn't really matter. Yoga mat's great. The chair is fine, whatever. And we're going to talk about a specific kind of pranayama. That is, it's a Sachali pranayama, which is the cooling breath, okay? So one thing that happens during our kind of panic, is that we start breathing faster. We start breathing because it's faster, it's more shallow. And then also our blood pressure goes up and our body temperature goes up, believe it or not. And that's a function of the blood kind of rushing toward our major organs and muscle groups, to prepare for that fight or that flight. So what we need to do is communicate to our lizard brain through our breath. Okay, that is really the only way to communicate to it. You can't just say, okay, calm down now, right? That doesn't work. So the way that you tell your body, look, this isn't a lion, is by taking really calm, very even breaths. So breathing in on a cooling breath is actually through the mouth. So we're going to do it a little differently than the first one. And then out through the nose. And the reason why we're going out through the nose is because you can't just lose it all. It has to be a little bit more purposeful, okay, and deliberate through the nose. You also have the opportunity, because we're going to breathe in through the mouth, to make this, like I said, a cooling breath. So if you can do this, and I'll come a little closer so you can see, if you can do this with your tongue, okay, we're going to actually push the tongue out and then curl it. So I know that looks weird, but it's a curled tongue, okay? And when you breathe in, you're actually breathing over that curl. So kind of like a straw, okay? Like you're sucking your air up through a straw. And that cools it off. It's a very cooling breath. If you can't do that, because that's actually a genetic thing, I think there are some of us that just, we just can't curl our tongues, and that's okay. If you can't curl your tongue, you can do a couple of different things. You can breathe in through your teeth, right? That cools as well, okay? And you can feel that effect. If you have very, very sensitive teeth, you might want to try to put your tongue towards the roof of your mouth so that you can get kind of a narrow space and breathe in that way. That'll get you a little bit of the way there. If you can't do the tongue, the teeth are really the best alternative. But if not, you've got the other option with your tongue toward the roof of your mouth. So coming back to our seats, find your sit bones, find your length in your spine, head on top of your spine. Okay, you can close your eyes if you like, you can fixate on a point if you like, but you want to try to keep still in other aspects of your body, right? Okay, so go ahead and prepare to breathe in. We're going to do like maybe 4 or 5 of these in a row. Okay, so it's in through the mouth, however you're going to do it, out through the nose, and the nose almost always takes about twice as long as the inhale. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so how was that for everybody? Yeah? It's a neat sensation to have that like cooling effect. Now, if you get dry mouth when you play, you're obviously going to need some water around for this, because this does kind of dry things out. If you're one of those people that gets too much saliva when you play, this is actually a really great way to kind of cut that down and dry it out. So like I said, it'll dry things out, but the cooling it's just like a nice, I don't know, kind of calming sensation for me. And then exhaling, like I said, takes almost twice as long as the inhale. So when you're exhaling, you're actually intentionally slowing that crazy heartbeat down, right? The other thing to think about is to keep true to the previous pranayama, which was in, kind of the lower part of your abs first, middle chest, and then exhale the same way, right? And that's another kind of coordination thing. But it can be very rhythmical, and once you start doing the breath in a rhythmical way, it ends up being, a little bit meditative as well. So, and that kind of brings me into my next and my final point here with mindfulness and meditation. So, and I've got one other thing for performance anxiety that we'll kind of talk about with mindfulness and meditation. They're all connected topics here. I don't know if any of you have a meditation practice or a mindfulness practice, but they're very closely related. And mindfulness is one of these things that you hear kind of thrown around a lot. It's sort of a key word, super word, but a lot of people don't really know what that means. And mindfulness is basically, I think it can mean different things for different people, but what you want to do is basically live in the moment, right? You're taking inventory of your body, you're accepting accepting the fact that, okay, I'm having some nerves, this is fine, right? Not ignoring, the fact that that's there and that it's part of who you are and what's happening in your body. And then living with it, right? Not saying, okay, I'm just going to be nervous and I'm going to have clammy hands and that's that. But taking it and allowing yourself to deal with it. Put it that way. It's kind of a hard thing to put into words. One of the things that we can do is allow a little bit of meditation time. If you have time before your performance, whenever this is, that you're getting nervous for, or even just an everyday practice, it's really good to have just a few minutes of, sort of your own time to focus. And you can do it any time of day, right? A lot of people like to do it kind of in the morning, right, when they wake up and kind of get their day started that way. You could do it in the shower if you're really crunched for time, right? You could meditate at stoplights on your way to driving to campus, whatever. You could do it at bed, your bedtime, before you fall asleep with your laptop on your lap, because everybody's so busy and doing things until the last minute, right? I'm guilty as well. I do this too. So when we're thinking about meditating, what I like to do is, again, find a comfortable seat. You can kind of do this anywhere. I will warn you, I did this once laying down. Well, I do this often laying down in Shavasana, right? Right, this is our corpse pose in yoga. But it's very easy to fall asleep this way. So if you feel like that might be you, pick a different pose. I like the easy pose. Other things that can work are hero's pose, okay, which I'll show you on the side. It's basically this way, right, with your knees out, and you're sitting kind of on your heels, okay, but you have that length in your spine. Or you can take this one step further if you're in a spot that can do this and do a child's pose. So you're basically taking your hero's pose and you're scooting your hands out, right? Now, again, since I've got the prenatal background, I can mention this small modification too, is that widening your knees for a child's pose actually really helps to get lower. And if you do have a belly, then you've got some space for the belly. But anyway, find your comfortable spot. It can be child's pose, it can be hero's pose, it can be easy pose. You could do this in mountain pose. It's whatever. And I like to close my eyes for this. You can pick a spot, anywhere that is comfortable, and pick a pranayama, pick a breathing exercise, and count your breaths. So basically, breathe in for maybe 2 or 3 or 4, and then out for 4 or 6 or 8. Okay, so you want to try to make the exhale as maybe twice as long-ish as the inhale. Okay, and again, that helps to kind of regulate the heart rhythm and heart rate. And then what the goal is to kind of be in your body. So take inventory of what is happening in your body right now, rather than thinking about, oh, I have to perform in 10 minutes, or rather than thinking about, I need to pick up groceries later, or I've got some homework things that need to be done, or I've got to remember to get gas on the way home, or whatever, because we all have those things. But the goal is to just spend 1 minute, see if you can start with a 1 minute meditation, and allow yourself just 1 minute to just clear your mind a little bit and be in your body. So I'm gonna set, because my watch died, I'm gonna set a timer on my phone for a minute, and we're gonna go ahead and do a little mindfulness right now. Okay, so pick your pose. Oops, we want not 30 minutes, we want 1 minute. There we go. Okay, pick your pose, and we're gonna start now. Okay, so finish your next breath and come on up out of your pose, whichever pose you've chosen. And how did that feel to just clear your mind for a minute? We often think we just don't have time for this stuff during the day, but everybody has time, I think, for 1 minute of meditation. And I think probably if we're consistent about that 1 minute, it'll grow into 2 minutes, grow into 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And that is actually another really good way to talk to that parasympathetic part of our brain that is controlling fight or flight. If we are able to kind of find that meditative moment, that place inside of us, it's a little bit more calming, right? There's one other pose that I wanted to show you to end with today, and I think we've got enough time. Yeah. And that is the legs up the wall. Okay. Now this is something that I actually do at home before I am going to my performance, because I don't know about you all, but I tend to get my nerves kind of early. Like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, got a recital today, but I have to wait until 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. So before I even pull my flute out, I often do the legs up the wall pose. This is another kind of physical way to talk to that parasympathetic part of your brain. So it will basically deliver more blood naturally away from your limbs and to your organs. And that physical change will help lower your heart rate and lower your blood pressure and tell your brain, your lizard brain, it's okay. I'm in this position because there really is not a fight or flight to be had, right? So I'm gonna move my my mat a little closer to the wall. So if you have a wall, that's really the most ideal. I have done this against a piano before. So you could do it against the piano, but I'll show you how it works first, and then you can decide how you want to try to do this in your own space. And I'm going to move my air purifier just in case, because I don't want to knock it over here. Okay. All right. So what you're going to do is sit next to the wall with kind of your I'm just doing my right side, so my right hip is literally touching the wall, okay? And I'm gonna scoot forward so that I can lay down right next to the wall here. I'm still up against it. And then I put my right foot up on the wall and start turning toward the wall, okay? So my feet are up against the wall, my bum is up against the wall. If you feel like this hurts your lower back, you can always put like a towel or a blanket or a little cushion or something under there. But the goal is to find a spot that you just feel supported in, okay? The legs up the wall can be done for, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 minutes if you really want to. You could fall asleep like this if you really want to. But this is also a really great opportunity to relax our shoulders and our jaw, right? Because we've got gravity kind of pulling us back and down against the floor. So our torso should feel kind of heavy on the floor against gravity. And then you might even feel a little bit of a stretch in the back of your legs getting your feet up the wall like this. And like I said, I don't often do this in my practice room. This is something that I do kind of, early in the day. If you're a very anxious person and you feel like, oh, I have a lesson today and that makes me anxious, maybe even just do this in the morning before you get up. I've actually done this on my bed with my feet up against like the headboard. That works pretty well. Whatever you can do to, allow yourself this moment here where you're supported. And then coming out of the pose, again, kind of be careful. You have to like walk down the wall and turn at the same time so that you don't pull anything, okay? And that's your legs up the wall position. I sometimes get even now just a little bit lightheaded as like, the blood kind of figures out where it needs to be, okay, from that. But it's a very relaxing position. I just anecdotally started doing the legs up the wall before, when I was taking orchestral auditions, before orchestral auditions rather than beta blockers. So that actually worked that well for me. So yeah, just another tool in your arsenal, thing to put through your repertoire there. So okay, I think we're just about at time. So does anybody have any questions?
I actually do have a question. Just doing this has made me realize that I have a lot of tension on the right side of my neck and shoulder.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess I didn't even really realize it until I started to stretch this. Do you have like any recommendations on one, how to get rid of it and how to prevent it?
Mm, the right side of your neck.
Mhm.
Is it the shoulder or is it up here in your?
Currently right now it's up in here, but I feel like I've noticed, I think my shoulders have been getting sore, from being in choir, I think from holding up the folders, but
Yeah.
right now I think it's my neck.
I think so. There's a couple of things about that. The first is yes, you can definitely stretch on, the same things we were doing at the beginning where you're kind of just, you know, allowing some flexibility. It might be contracting because are you wearing a bag, like a backpack?
Yeah, my backpack is really heavy.
That's something to think about. I mean, I've never gone to this extreme because I wear a bag too. But when I was at Peabody, Lori Sokoloff, who I love dearly, she's such a great mentor. She had fibromyalgia, still does, and really couldn't wear a bag, and anything more than a purse. She used to just take a roller bag. She had like literally like an airline carry-on for her, 5 piccolos that she would take around all over the place. So I don't think she had that many, but her flute and her music and her piccolo all went in there, and that was what she did. She did not allow herself, that opportunity to have that muscle contract. So it might be that you're feeling it in choir because you're using it in a different way all of a sudden, but it might be that you've kind of crunched it other times during the day and now it's like, oh, that actually hurts because I'm using it in a different way. So the bag thing is one way to possibly prevent that from happening. Stretching it obviously is going to be another way. Heat works really well for muscles love heat, like muscles that are upset, they just so if you have a hot water bottle or like one of those beanbag socks or something, you know what I mean? Sometimes using that can be, just kind of help that muscle relax because it's been used to clenching. The other thing to think about is that we never do anything in a vacuum. That one muscle is connected to like 8 different other muscle groups. And so there may be something that you're doing in your playing or even in just walking, or moving around that is, or in your jaw that might be tightening this, and then that muscle is reacting, or you could be sitting in a weird position during the day, and maybe one of your back muscles is kind of in a weird spot, and this is all of a sudden compensating. So there are a couple other things to look for too, just to make sure that the stuff around it isn't being used in a weird way.
Okay,
Those would be the big things, I think.
yeah, my jaw pops on the right side,
Mhm.
so that has something to do with it. But I also have noticed that it's really uncomfortable for me to stay perfectly upright when I'm playing flute. Like,
Mm.
I need to tilt a little bit to feel comfortable.
Mhm. Yep. And that it might be something in your back. If you're tilting a little bit this way to feel comfortable, it might be that there's, I don't know what, it could be a number of things. It might be an old injury, or it might be a short muscle, or it might be, I mean, heck, it could be a magnesium thing where you've got a muscle that's, kind of tightening up in another spot, and then you feel like you need to move that way. It could be lots of that. So you know what would be a really good way to stretch that out actually is a little bit of a ragdoll pose. So you have your Utkatasana, which is your mountain pose. And if you raise your arms up and then kind of swan dive over and allow your upper half to hang, right? That might be a way to stretch that out a little bit. And if you find that there is some tension in one or more spots, then you know where you're looking. Then okay, that muscle is the one that's the culprit, or that's what's going to be connecting the neck thing to the back thing, or whatever. That's a good one. Another good one, if you have a strap, and you don't need to strap, but what I like is to do my feet out, and then take a strap and pull them this way. And if I can keep my back kind of not straight, it's always curved, but hinge at the hips. Sometimes we're carrying tension in our hips that can manifest in our back. And that's a good way to just do a really quick, like kind of a hamstring stretch that's also a low back stretch, right? And you feel it that way. So any of those could work. And like I said, nothing is ever, everything works in tandem, so it's almost never like I just have this one muscle.
Yeah.
It's almost always like there's a whole group of muscles that, kind of deals with that. So,
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other burning questions? No? Well, as a follow-up for today, I will send everybody a link that we've been using for Saturday. We didn't do it this morning, but Saturday yoga for the university students. I've been doing a yoga class, and it's free, and you guys can all come if you want. It's more traditional yoga, but we work out stuff like this all the time, where it's, we have tension here, or a sore muscle there, or something like that. So it's geared towards musicians, even though it's more of a traditional class. So you all are welcome to join. And, if any of you have questions in the meantime, then, you can always email me that too. So cool. Well, what we're going to do now, we actually have a little break between now and when we do our masterclass. What I would like to do is actually share while we're on break, and you can feel free to turn your videos off and go get a cup of coffee or a drink or a snack or something. But we have 3 videos and presentations today to share from our flute vendors, and they do have coupon codes and free shipping and stuff like that going on right now. So I'm going to share one from Royalton Music, and then let me see, is Sarah here? We might have Flute World presenting a little tiny bit. If not, I will send out their information in the chat and email it as well, because they have a couple of coupon codes. And then we'll start our masterclass at 12:30 with Amanda Blakey, who is also here. And then Flute Specialist has a slightly longer video that we'll show at the end of the masterclass, and that'll be in between the class and then the concert, okay, at 3 this afternoon. So all right, so we'll just kind of transition a little bit. I'm going to leave Zoom up so you don't have to log off or anything, and I'll go ahead and show the video and then answer a couple of questions here that have popped up in the chat. So let's see. Okay.